Hey everyone, this is a 12th edition of ZecDaily. It is September 8th, 2022. And finishing up ZecHub Season 1, as we announced on the forum, and might change in Season 2. We'll have some more people working on this, hopefully. And we'll do a vote, and we'll see if ZecDaily is the name that should remain for this, because it doesn't come out every day. But here we go. Let's just dive right into it. In 10 minutes, the Arborist Call is going to go live. All the teams developing on the protocol, attend this call and just talk about different things that they're working on, issues that they might be having, and then they, collaborate to find solutions for those things from an engineering perspective. And it's live in 10 minutes. And ZK Squirrel here is the community note taker. So they provide a bunch of notes after the call, summarizing everything that happened in the call. So people like ourselves don't have to watch it, and it's obviously a great job. I honestly would recommend checking out the call. Obviously, if you're seeing this now, the call's probably already started, so you might want to just read their notes after it's posted. But I think it's a great opportunity to learn more about what's happening on the protocol from a development perspective. And ZK Squirrel does a great job here of always after the call providing a summary and providing notes on things that were discussed, and would definitely recommend following him and just checking out all the work that he's been putting out. So great stuff there, and excited to see the commentary and joining the call here soon, and excited to see the commentary from ZK Squirrel afterwards. Zooko appeared on Bankless, and this was released Monday. I actually watched it, I watched it Tuesday or Wednesday, and I thought it was a really interesting episode. There was a lot of talk around privacy just being this fun, this thing that we need from a technological perspective, with all these different systems that we're working on and using and believing that are the future of finance, and that privacy needs to be at the core of these things. I think a lot of the discussion was around topics from other communities. There's a lot some proof of stake chatter versus proof of work. There's some chatter stuff around happening in Ethereum. But I thought the most interesting thing from this episode, and I'm going to provide do some comms around it maybe today or tomorrow, nothing super official, but just putting out some thoughts on it, is using Zcash as this store of value asset and porting it to other chains, and then using it or another currency, maybe the native currency for the respective blockchain that it's going to, for DeFi, but kind of having Zec as this private store value that provides you the highest level of privacy. So it's okay, let's imagine you have 10 Zec, you port one over, you do some DeFi, you either use RenZec on Ethereum or exchange it for ETH, and you do some DeFi stuff, and then you do all your cool DeFi stuff, and then you port it after you're done doing DeFi, and you want to get out of your position, or you did your trades and you want to move it back to a private asset, you port it back to the Zcash blockchain into your shielded wallet, and you have this private store value. I think that's a really interesting, because Zooko and I have talked a lot about this, and I would tend to agree with him that I think that's probably the best use case for Zec. And again, Zec is a permissionless asset. You can do whatever you want with it. You don't need to listen to us or him or me on what to do with it. But I think it's a really interesting use case, and I find that using it as a private store value, where you can hold value relative to things that you're doing on different ecosystems after you do it, I think that's a really compelling thing for people who are who want to have a level of privacy. I also think using it as cash, I know Chris Tomio and Josh Swihart have talked about that, using it as cash, you would use physical cash in the real world. You have a bank account with let's say $1,000, and you pull out 50, and 50 is your cash, right? I think that's another interesting use case, and this is all from a cross-chain perspective. So getting other people from other ecosystems interested in Zcash and Zec, I think that's a great way to introduce them, using it as cash for cash payments, and then using it as a store of value to maintain privacy. Two really great use cases, and Zooko talked about that in this episode, and I thought he talked about Zec, the asset, being that shielded asset for a variety of different things. Thought it was super cool, and thought it was really interesting. That was my biggest takeaway, kind of just reinforcing that idea and hearing some more thoughts expounded on it. So super cool. And he had busy month for Zooko. Good golly, appeared on the Defiant podcast and really talked about the origin story of Bitcoin and how Bitcoin wanted to use ZK proofs in 2010, but they weren't ready. And then Zcash kind of putting in Bitcoin saying like, oh, we don't want it. When ZK proofs and ZK snarks became ready for production and could have been implemented into Bitcoin, the Bitcoin community was like, we don't want to do that right now. We would rather it work on another project and potentially add it into Bitcoin later because it's risky. Zcash did it. Zcash did it really well. And now Zcash is this other cryptocurrency that provides, obviously, as we all know, high level of privacy when compared to assets like Bitcoin. So it's really just kind of highlighting into the beginnings of Zcash and kind of Zooko's thoughts on that, and also his time as like an early person involved in Bitcoin. Would recommend checking out as well. And then thirdly, he was on the Foresight Institute podcast with the CEO from Foresight Institute and talking again about Bitcoin and privacy and how Zcash can be there to fill that void. There's a couple episodes from some Bitcoin podcasts that have been released in the last few days on privacy. And I want to, I would recommend honestly listening to this, listening to the Defiant, and then listening to the Bitcoin side. I think kind of understanding, I don't, yell at me, I don't care. I don't think this is like a winner take all type scenario. I think there's going to be different projects, and I think there's going to be different currencies that have different use cases, and privacy, the highest level of privacy for everything is like the best thing in my opinion. And I know people, and even people like I work with, probably disagree with me on that. But I would recommend just hearing both sides of the aisle, and I think a lot of the time it probably strengthens your bullishness on Zec and on Zcash, just because using privacy, like for Bitcoin, for example, is like really, really hard. Like I've done it, tried it, used different things, and I have found it to be pretty difficult and not as, I would say, easy. Even with like some of the user experience stuff going on with Zcash, it's not perhaps as easy as people would make it out to be. But then again, like you have this thing where it's like security over convenience. So I think from a Bitcoin perspective, that's the argument. Like if you want more security, more privacy, then you're giving up a lot of the convenience. I have just seen using Zcash, personally, that it is pretty convenient. It provides a high level of privacy. Used Monero recently as well, and thought Monero was, pretty comparable in terms of user experience. Although there's a few things on Monero that I wasn't, a super big fan of in terms of like, different ways to like store it. I was just checking that out. Thought it was relatively hard. But overall, like using it for like payments, it was quite similar to Zcash. I would say the user experience is currently, with all things considered, are pretty similar. And Bitcoin's obviously a lot more difficult. So when you kind of like listen to these different episodes and listen to these different perspectives, it allows you to hear the counter arguments, which I think, honestly, in my opinion, strengthen your conviction in the asset that you're using the most, and then also opens up your opinions to other things that are out there that might be worth considering or worth just looking into from like an interest perspective. So we recommend checking those out as well to kind of hear like the two sides of the aisle. So the next bit, so Pay with Zcash has been releasing, like obviously all the time is releasing great ways to like use your Zec for payments. And obviously like I heard there's something in the UK, I think it's like buying honey in the UK. That's a way to use your Zec. I think that's really cool. I'm going to be in the UK soon, and I'm gonna, if it's in the south of the UK, south of England, I'm gonna check that out. That'd be pretty cool to do. And also they're talking here about this web service provider that provides privacy oriented hosting, VPS, zero log VPN, and then also domain ownership services. That they do take Zcash as one of their 9 payment options, and they accept it directly and do not use a payment processor. So what that means essentially is let's just bring up nonprofits. If you're donating to a nonprofit and they accept Zec, if they use something like the Giving Block, which is a third-party processor that helps them process cryptocurrency donations, you send it to a transparent address, and I think you pay some fees associated with that. But if you donate to someone like EFF, you can donate shielded Zec directly to a shielded address. So I think from that perspective, I think a lot of people don't want to use third-party payment providers. Again, people have different opinions and different appetite for using different things. Some people don't want to use them. And these options are here where people accept it directly in a P2P manner. Super interesting. So I would recommend, if looking for some of these services, check this out, see if it's worth diving into. So I mentioned this in the newsletter. Zcash Brazil was at Blockchain Heal Festival, where they talked about privacy, liberty is the word they used here, hardware wallets, transactions with shielded Zec, and they did a lot of networking. I just want to give a huge shout out to them. I think the work that they're doing, in Brazil, and then also combined with Zcash Espanol and like the Zcash Latam community and the Zcash Latam Discord, they're just doing a really great job of spreading the mission of Zcash, going to these conferences, getting out there, getting people to use. It looks like someone here is doing a shielded transaction for the first time, like getting people to use the currency, and I just think it's super cool. Like all the work they're doing, just big shout out to them, and excited to continue working with them, and just think they're doing an amazing job. And hopefully here in the near future might be able to meet in person. We'll see. Don't know. Here we have, I was looking for something earlier. So the Tor project released Arti 1.0.0, so they're rewriting Tor in Rust. When Tor was initially developed, they wrote it in C because that was the most practical thing that they could do at the time. I think that was like in the late 90s, early 2000s that they did that. And in 2020, they started working on a Rust implementation. Rust was developed in 2020 after Tor was launched. And they feel that Rust is a more practical and more efficient programming language for the project right now. And the cool thing about this is that the Zcash Community Grants Program funded this work to give the Tor project more engineering resources to complete this project faster. And they recently posted in the forum about this update. The application is now ready for production use. And if you're an engineer or someone super interested in privacy, recommend checking this out. I'm gonna kind of dive into it, maybe just from a high level, just trying to understand it perspective. But recommend everyone check this out as well. So Zcash RU posted here that in Zecwallet Lite version 1.8.8, the anti-spam feature has been added to PC and that it works. So I was just putting the tweet in the corresponding comment section, in the description. Check this out if you want to learn more about the anti-spam feature. There's been some conversations around it in the forums. I'll leave the opinions and the comments on that to the people in the forum who are obviously more educated around this. And would recommend checking those discussions out as well. So if you want to learn more about that, just head to the forum. Conversations happening there. And then we posted ZecHub. ZK Squirrel wrote a section in the Zec wiki that we've created about using Zec in DeFi. So I created a tutorial around it, probably 2-3 months back. Probably less than that, maybe a month back. And ZK Squirrel did a great job of going into the GitHub and submitting a PR to add this page to the wiki. Just kind of outlining how to use Zec in DeFi. So at a high level, it's you have shielded Zec, you port it to Ethereum, and you do all your DeFi stuff. And you can either leave it there, or you can port it back into your shielded wallet. Zooko posted a tweet saying that there might be some privacy implications with this. I think so. Couple follow-ups. I think the biggest privacy implication is Ethereum Zec to Ethereum. Like you don't want to use Zec as a pass-through. I think that just it's very easy for chain analysis to kind of see the pass-through patterns. So that's one thing. And the other thing is just kind of understanding that every time you take Zec out of a shielded wallet and put it into a transparent system, you are losing some level of privacy. And I think just understanding that is just really important for people, because I think people have this expectation that if I'm using a private asset and I bring it back, doesn't that don't I have this same level of privacy? And the answer is no. Every time you either use you pay someone with Zec and they cash it out for transparent Zec or fiat, or you move Zec to a transparent blockchain to do DeFi stuff. You're not losing, you still have privacy, but there are data leakage, right? You're potentially leaking data that if you do it over a longer period of time and do it consistently enough could link stuff back to you. So just saying that, just something to consider. Don't try to try to do stuff pretty consistently when you're doing stuff like this, and try not to create any obscene patterns, although not advice on how to use Zcash. Just my opinion, and I would recommend everyone do their own research with regards to using stuff like this. But ZK Scroll, great stuff. Big shout out. Thank you so much for doing this. And then the Zcash Foundation put out their Q2 2022 transparency report, just kind of go overviewing the way that they use their funds to fund their operations. So if you're interested in that, check out the transparency report that was released yesterday. And lastly, bit of a debate going on. Not a debate, that's the wrong way to put it. Wrong word, sorry. Bit of a really good conversation between myself, Roommate Musing, and then Sasha, who's in the Zcash community, came in at the end of the conversation. And we talked about a lot of things, but really complicated topic, and it might be better to do that conversation in podcast form. So I'll just leave it at that. And I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. Sorry again for, taking some time to get this out. But again, appreciate all the support here, and thank you guys so much, and have a great day.